She was found beneath a pile of dry leaves deep in sensationalism, the forest, still breathing. And he vanished like he never existed. It was a scorching afternoon in a remote stretch of woods in Louisiana. Two black travelers, Ethan and Rebecca, were on their way home from a weekend camping trip. They'd called their families before heading out. And then nothing. No more calls. No signs. Their car was found days later, parked miles from Kisatchie. The campsite, the front tire shredded. But inside, everything was untouched. Two unopened water bottles, their gear neatly stowed. On the passenger seat, a scrap of paper with jagged handwriting, not an accident, but if something had happened. Why did no one hear them? Scream? And why had Ethan removed the GPS tracker only to reattach it, as if nothing had ever been disturbed before their names made headlines in the local news? Ethan Brooks and Rebecca Morgan were just an ordinary couple living in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Their lives weren't filled with flashy Instagram photos, luxury vacations, or public declarations of love. Instead, they were built on quiet mornings, making coffee in a small kitchen, weekend bike rides out to the levee to catch the sunset, and gentle debates over whether to plant more vegetables or adopt a dog. Ethan was a mechanical engineer who worked at a small shop specializing in restoring classic cars. He was tall, dark-skinned, and always seemed to be calculating something in his mind. People who knew him said he didn't talk much, but his hands knew exactly what to do. He loved putting machines together, hiking, and had an unusual habit. Whenever stressed, he would take apart an old watch and rebuild it perfectly. His father, a mechanic, died of a stroke when Ethan was just 20. That loss made him more withdrawn, but also gave him a deep appreciation for time. Rebecca was his opposite. A freelance photographer, she often collaborated with regional newspapers, covering stories about local communities, environmental issues, and everyday lives of working-class people. She was a head shorter than Ethan, with thick, curly hair, usually tied up high, and eyes that lit up when she talked about a street market, a single mother, or a child playing by a dirt road. Raised in Lafayette by a working-class family, her mother a night shift nurse, her father a former sawmill worker, Rebecca once dreamed of becoming a TV reporter. But after photographing a story about a flood-stricken neighborhood, she realized what she truly loved was telling simple truths through her lens. Ethan and Rebecca first met at a conference on green infrastructure. Rebecca was hired to shoot photos, while Ethan was there as a technical consultant. It wasn't love at first sight, but later that night, Rebecca sent Ethan a photo she'd taken of him, adjusting a microphone for one of the speakers. She captioned it, "The quietest man in the Kisatchie room who gets things done." From there, they started meeting for coffee, volunteering on local projects, and before they knew it, they were together. Their love wasn't loud. It showed up in modest dinners, shared laughter over old comic books, and the way they always found their way back to each other after a long day. Though they lived simply, Ethan and Rebecca often dreamed of a life more complete, a small wooden house in the outskirts, where they could raise a big dog, grow tomatoes in the garden, and build a garage where Ethan could work on engines and Rebecca could have a sunlit studio. Whenever they had time, they talked about trading. In their old car for a camper van, hitting the sea of the side, road to chase wildflowers, golden light, and the nature preserves they'd marked on Google Maps. Of all those destinations, Louisiana held a special place, not just because it was close, but because they considered it the second home of our youth. After the pandemic, they spent more and more time in nature. Ethan once said, "Out there, there's no deadlines, no email, just breath and bugs." Rebecca would reply, "Out there, you don't say much, but I understand everything. They'd slept in the Kisatchie rainforest, waded through icy streams, argued over how to pitch a tent, then laughed when they both forgot the lighter. Those trips, short as they were, brought them closer, not just as lovers, but as true companions. Their final trip started like the others. It was late July, hot, but before the forest rains hit. They chose Kisatchie, a vast national forest, covering over 600,000 acres, known for its secluded trails, rocky creeks, and rich ecosystems. Ethan had said, "Let's go deeper this time. Somewhere quieter. Somewhere you can hear the forest." They packed light, enough food for 3 days, 2 large water bottles, a camera, first aid kit, paper maps, and the GPS tracker Ethan always wore like a habit. Before setting off, Rebecca posted a photo on Instagram. Their silver Subaru sat beneath the trees. Ethan stood at the open trunk, head bowed, slightly, holding a multi-tool. What chilled people later was his gaze, not toward us, the camera, but off into the forest behind him, as if he heard something only he could hear. They lost cell signal early that morning. By evening, no one could reach them. That was the last time anyone knew exactly where they were. In that final photo, when examined closely, there was one detail that haunted the family, a tiny red cloth snagged on the back door. No one remembered owning it. That morning, they stopped at a small convenience store in Alexandria, about 40 miles from Kisatchie's trailhead. They bought extra bread, backup batteries, and canned coffee. Security footage shows them walking in, Rebecca in a wide-brimmed hat, notebook in hand, Ethan in a dark t-shirt, light backpack, nodding to the clerk. Nothing unusual. They looked like any couple setting out to explore the American South. But when police reviewed the footage later, something strange stood out. A silver gray pickup truck had parked right behind them. Same time, the driver never got out. And when Ethan and Rebecca left, the truck followed, keeping exactly 1 car length behind. The license plate was unreadable due to glare. But in a small town, strange vehicles get noticed. So why did no one remember seeing it? After the store, they went to the Kisatchie ranger station to register their route. Ethan filled in the log clearly, Trail 17, 1. Overnight stay near Crystal Creek, then looping back. The ranger recalled Rebecca smiling brightly as she asked about where wildflowers grew, thanking them profusely before leaving. No one thought it would be the last time either of them was seen. That evening, Rebecca sent her mom a short message, setting up a camp now, all good. See you Monday. Sent at 5:46 p.m. After that, no more signal. Rebecca always checked in when she traveled. Not out of fear, but respect. Her mom, a former nurse, had taught her, wherever you go, leave a sign. That night, nothing. The next morning, nothing. Monday passed in silence. That evening, Rebecca didn't call, as promised. Ethan didn't respond to any texts. The families began to worry, but it wasn't until Tuesday morning when Rebecca failed to show up for a community photo assignment. She'd confirmed days before that worry turned to alarm. She had never missed a professional appointment without notice. The family contacted the ranger station. They checked the log. Yes, Ethan and Rebecca had entered the forest Friday, but no one had seen them leave. And in Kisatchie, over 200 miles of trails, thousands of acres with no cell signal, no flyovers, and no voices. If you don't return on time, survival odds shrink by the hour. What no one knew at the time was that Rebecca might still be alive. The only thing standing in the way of finding her was that no one knew where to look. When rangers and local police began searching Trail 17 on Wednesday morning, they had no clear idea where to start. Kisatchie is an expansive forest, its paths crisscrossed and largely unmonitored, with little to no cell signal. Relying on Ethan's registered hiking log, Search team began tracing the route he had listed. By midday, a team of rangers happened upon a silver Subaru Forester parked off-kilter down a slope near a remote section called Hollow Bend, nearly 5 kilometers from Trail 17. The car was still locked. The front right tire had been shredded, as if it had struck a small tree stump. The tire marks in the dry dirt showed the car had stopped there, but none left the site, suggesting it hadn't been towed or turned around. Using a spare key, officers opened the vehicle from the rear. The first thing they smelled was a faint mustiness, damp, unwashed camping clothes, and the acrid scent of scorched plastic, likely from an old charging cord. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood. Backpacks still sat in the rear seats. 2 unopened water bottles lay on the floor. Rebecca's camera was still in her bag, but the battery had been removed. In the glove box, they found a folded piece of paper. Written in shaky handwriting were 3 words. Not an accident, no signature, no date. The note appeared hastily torn from a notebook, with a small ink blot in the corner, as if the writer had hesitated before writing. Forensic analysis confirmed there was no sign of forced entry. Under the car, weeds had been flattened and dried from days of sunlight. One specialist estimated, based on forest, temperature, and soil conditions, that the vehicle had been there for at least 3 days, meaning it had been abandoned the day after Ethan and Rebecca lost contact. But if the car broke down, why didn't they seek help? And if they left on foot, why leave everything behind? The most puzzling discovery was that Ethan's personal GPS tracker was missing from the vehicle. When investigators traced the device's ID through the manufacturer, they found that its signal had gone dark around 10 a.m. Saturday, just hours after the couple likely set up camp. Then, strangely, the GPS emitted a single signal the next day, on Sunday, for less than a minute from the exact location where the car was found. After that, silence. Tire marks around the area matched only the Subaru. There were no clear footprints, no evidence that anyone else had been nearby. And that, more than anything, was what unsettled people most. Immediately after finding the car, the search expanded rapidly. Forest Service crews, state police, and locals. Volunteer rescue teams mobilized. Detailed topographic maps of Kisatchie covered a makeshift command center at the nearest ranger station. Every possible trail leading away from the car's location was marked with search radii plotted in all directions. But no one could say for sure where Ethan and Rebecca had gone after leaving the vehicle. The GPS provided no further clues. There was no phone signal, no surveillance footage. It was as if they had vanished into the woods. Veteran rescuers suggested focusing near Crystal Creek, the closest major water source, and a place Ethan had told friends he loved camping. But Crystal Creek lay over 4 kilometers away, through rugged, overgrown terrain. A team was dispatched to scout the area. Meanwhile, their families began sharing the story online. Images and details about the missing couple spread across community groups and regional news. Someone claimed to have seen a woman resembling Rebecca rushing past a tiny post office nearly 30 kilometers from the forest that Sunday afternoon, but security footage later showed it wasn't her. The trail of false leads kept growing. The more people knew about the disappearance, the more conflicting accounts emerged. On Friday morning, almost a week after they vanished, a rescue team near the eastern edge of Crystal Creek spotted something caught on a dry branch along a narrow path, a small red cloth fragment, identical to the one seen peeking out of Rebecca's bag in her last Instagram photo. Beneath the trees, they found faint footprints leading toward a little-used trail. Further along, they discovered something else, the plastic cap from a water bottle, one of the kind Ethan preferred. It lay about 200 meters off the main path. On its own, not significant, but in a forest where everything disappears under layers of brush and leaves, a cap like that doesn't just appear by chance. The area was immediately cordoned off. A special search team began sweeping every inch. They called out Ethan's name, Rebeca's. They listened for any echo from the deep woods, but all they found was silence. The mood grew heavy. One officer whispered, "This doesn't feel like a physical hiking mishap." No one called for help. No struggle. No life. But also, no death. And so the question hung in his head. The trees. If they had an accident, why did no one hear them? If someone harmed them, why leave no trace? And if they simply walked away, where are it? They go, when everything else was still in the air except them. As word of their disappearance spread, calls from local residents brought a flood of details, but with each lead, the picture of Ethan and Rebeca grew more tangled. A hunter named Wallace, about 15 kilometers from the forest, reported seeing a black woman walking alone along the North Fork of Crystal Creek in Cloud. Sunday morning, 2 days after they disappeared. She moved fast, seemed panicked, like she was trying to find a way out. I thought about calling out, but she vanished behind the trees in seconds. He couldn't be certain it was Rebeca, though his description, curly hair tied up, old light blues, shirt matched. Yet, when authorities combed the area, no footprints or traces were found, even though the ground was damp from light rain the previous night. Meanwhile, June, an elderly woman at a shuttered gas station south of the forest, said she saw a man muddy and tired looking pass by on Saturday afternoon, quietly asking for directions to the highway. He didn't speak much, just whispered, thanked me, and left. Looked like someone hiding from someone. She couldn't clearly recall his face, but when shown Ethan's photo, she hesitated. Could have been him. Could not. I'm old. These witness accounts didn't align. If Rebeca was seen on Sunday, she may have lived at least 48 hours after losing contact. If Ethan was spotted on Saturday in a different area, had they separated? Why? And why had no one reported them calling for help? Police raised news at those questions. Ethan's phone, long since powered off, revealed offline maps downloaded before the trip, one of which was of a forest more than 80 miles away from Kisatchie. They had no plan to venture there. Why had he downloaded it? Meanwhile, forensic teams discovered Ethan's GPS tracker had been removed from its mount. The cut was too precise, like a specialty knife. Someone had intentionally disabled locational tracking and then reactivated it once, possibly to mislead. These questions looped through briefing rooms. Were they being watched? Were they fleeing? Or were they hiding something they couldn't tell anyone, even those closest to them? In one review, meeting veteran volunteer Daniel Moore, who had worked on 40 forest searches, asked reassignment to share something he felt was wrong but wasn't sure how relevant. On Thursday afternoon, while scanning a seldom used fork of Crystal Creek with teammate Mariah, they stumbled into a cluster of fallen trees illuminated by a circle of sunlight. There, Daniel found a piece of rough brown cloth, like the lining of a military backpack tied to a branch as a marker. What stunned him more was the knot. Not random, but a double hitch survival knot, the kind Ethan, who had served in the Army Reserve, would know. He carefully marked the GPS location and returned. The next day with a forensic team, beneath layers of dry leaves, they discovered something chilling, a faint drag mark nearly a meter long, enough to suggest someone had been dragged or had laid there. No blood, no hair, no footprints. Only one item remained, a small white plastic button, the same type sewn onto the shirt Rebeca wore when she disappeared. That sight shifted the investigation's direction. A new theory emerged. Did Ethan leave the knot intentionally to guide someone or to signal something? But if so, why not a clearer message? What if he ran out of time? That night, when the search team returned to base, Mariah spoke for the first time about what she sensed at that clearing, a faint sound, as if deep, breathing or a whisper. They called out Ethan's name, then Rebecca's. No response. Still, Mariah said she felt someone near until they left the area. She wasn't superstitious. She was an ER nurse used to tension. But she said, I've never had chills like that. Not fear. It was a sorrow so deep it settled into my bones. Police documented the detail, but couldn't verify it. No bodies, no witnesses, no proof of life or death. Still, the button, the drag line, the survival knot all left behind an undeniable sense. Something indeed happened here, and someone tried to leave a final mark. From that angle, the disappearance wasn't just a case of getting lost. It became an open question hanging between the trees. If they didn't walk away on their own, who brought them there just when investigators were going in circles with theories? A surprising turn unfolded. Rebecca's brother, Malik Morgan, decided to access her personal laptop after getting it back from the police. Rebeca was meticulous. Everything was saved, sometimes hidden. In a folder ominously labeled Drafts May, Malik discovered dozens of photos, PDFs, and notes from a personal investigation. Rebeca, it turned out, had quietly been tracking illegal logging activity in Kisatchie National Forest for nearly 3 months. She had not shared this with friends or the press, perhaps wanting to gather enough proof before going public. Her notes included GPS coordinates, timestamps of logging trucks coming in and out, and long-distance photos of unauthorized timber sites. One image clearly showed a truck license plate cross-referenced to a small Mississippi logging company previously fined for transporting unlicensed wood. Even more revealing, among the files was a description of a man she called the Watcher. Rebeca wrote, he showed up 3 times in 2 weeks, never spoke, just stood by a truck or near the forest, staring at my camera. I didn't dare approach. The last time he looked right at me, then put his finger to his lips as if to say, stay silent. Rebeca didn't record his name or face, only a few. Lines of description: tall, a full tattoo sleeve. On his right arm, old hiking boots, gray pickup. Truck, the same description of the vehicle seen near the convenience store when Ethan and Rebeca left. This evidence was forwarded immediately to police. Among Kisatchie's local residents was a man named Ellis Rollins, once prosecuted for threatening a journalist in 2019, but cleared due to lack of evidence. He had worked for a logging company and lived less than 10 miles from the forest edge. Traffic records showed his vehicle matched a gray pickup. Authorities obtained a search warrant to inspect Ellis's property. Ethan and Rebeca were not found, but in a back storage shed, they discovered a pale blue raincoat stained with mud that matched samples from the Crystal Creek area, and a Kisatchie topographic map with several hand-marked points matching Rebecca's recorded GPS coordinates. Ellis was interviewed. He denied any involvement. His lawyer claimed it was coincidence that did the case. Map was just used for hunting. There was no DNA, no witness placing Ellis and Rebeca together, no evidence he had ever encountered her. Yet for the families, one chilling question remained. If Rebeca was investigating and if someone was aware, could she and Ethan have unknowingly strayed into a territory they were never meant to enter, a place they were not supposed to leave? As the case gained national attention, Rebecca's family chose silence. Not because they didn't want justice, but because They understood their daughter had waded into something far larger. Malik, who had shared nearly everything with Rebeca, revealed she'd hinted at something in the Kisatchie no one dares touch. He assumed it was professional passion. Rebeca was not the type to seek trouble or risk fame. She just wanted the truth. But this time, truth seemed to move beyond her control. For Ethan, everything became even more obscured. He left no clear clues, just the abrupt silence of a disabled GPS and a few unexplainable signs. No one knew if he was involved in Rebecca's investigation or simply swept in without realizing. One theory emerged. Maybe Ethan left false trails, fake map markers, survival knots, even reactivating the GPS briefly to guide rescue teams. But if so, why leave no explicit message? Or had he simply run out of time? The pain for Ethan's family stretched deeper than anything they had ever known. His mother, retired schoolteacher Loretta Brooks, preserved the little library where Ethan had learned to read as a child, now piled with articles about her son lost in the forest. She once told reporters, "I don't need an apology. I just want a place to put flowers, a place to say his name." But what truly stunned everyone was what happened next. 9 days after their disappearance, Rebeca was found. She lay beneath a large tree, covered almost completely with dry leaves, her legs bruised, severely dehydrated but alive. No one could believe their eyes. She had survived nearly 240 hours in the forest, without food, without contact, and with no one hearing her call for help. When she awoke in the hospital, she spoke very little. Her voice was hoarse and slow. In her first words, she barely whispered, "I saw him, and then someone pushed me down." Then she closed her eyes and said nothing more. That sentence became the headline in countless reports, and the tragedy. No one knew if him meant Ethan or someone else, and that someone remained forever a mystery. No explanation fits neatly. No evidence is conclusive. Only Rebeca remains, alive yet detached from the world she knew. And Ethan, a name fading from missing person files, yet forever present in the gaze of the girl who once held his hand entering the woods. Below is a seamless, continuous English translation of the next chapter, crafted for documentary-style narration with emotional depth and tension. After Rebeca was found, the investigation team hoped for conclusive answers, but reality proved far more complex. She survived, but her mental and physical health suffered deeply. Doctors diagnosed her with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and her memory of the missing days remained fragmented. When asked what she could recall, she described scattered images, blinding light through the hall, canopy, distant footsteps, cold and darkness, and, most haunting, a gentle hand touching her shoulder before everything went blank. Police worked to reconstruct the timeline, yet nothing fit. Rebecca's jacket was found neatly folded on a tree, branch over 400 meters away, clean, undisturbed, unlike the sign of someone lost or panicked. Inside was a folded note, blank except for a tiny ink dot, written with a pen matching Ethan's. Meanwhile, Ellis Rollins, the initial suspect, lost credibility. The mud sample on the raincoat didn't perfectly match, and no witness placed him near where Rebecca's was found. No DNA, no physical evidence. Most importantly, Rebeca remembered no faces. Her brother Malik began asking, maybe Ethan was creating distractions, or maybe he was controlled by someone? It wasn't suspicion toward Ethan, just heartbreak over not knowing whether his sister was abandoned by someone, or whether the person she trusted most couldn't save her. Rebeca recalled waking up on day 3 after disappearing, and that Ethan wasn't there. But based on her physical condition and medical's opinion, she'd likely fallen into unconscious or semi-conscious states by day 5. So there's a window of 2 days during which she might have moved or been moved to the location where she was found. No footprints, no drag marks. No one saw anything. Experts speculated, could someone have helped her and then left? But who? Why no call for help? And if someone was helping, why conceal it so tightly? Rebeca couldn't answer. When asked about her most vivid memory, she whispered, "I saw Ethan standing in that clearing. He looked at me, said nothing. Then he walked away. I think that wasn't the last time Sankoayakot." The 3rd week after her rescue, as media attention waned, a silent search continued, led not by police, but by volunteers who refused to accept a missing person case without closure. Among them was Daniel Moore, who had discovered early traces of Rebeca. Daniel believed the case wasn't over. He returned to the clearing where the button had been found, this time with soil thermal scanners, infrared cameras, and detailed satellite maps. On an overcast afternoon, Daniel and intern Javi searched a marshy area about half a mile from Rebecca's discovery site. It was considered dead terrain, too wet, too difficult. Yet it was here they unexpectedly found something. A sneaker. A gray Asics trainer matching the type Ethan habitually wore with a slightly worn sole. It wasn't lying out in the open. It was wedged under the exposed roots of an upturned tree, nearly buried in soil and moss. Inside, the insole bore wear consistent with a right-footed wearer. No blood, no rips. They immediately alerted police. Upon arrival, forensic teams found another item. Beneath the roots, a plastic water bottle cap from the same brand found near the trail earlier. Notably, both items were completely dry in a damp, mossy environment that was highly unusual. It was almost as if someone had placed them there, intentionally but discreetly. When Rebeca was told about the shoe and shown the image, she broke down in tears. After several minutes, she managed to say that was his shoe, but not that place. Her words hint at 2 possibilities. Her memory may be distorted, or the evidence was moved after the fact. And if someone had enough time and familiarity with the terrain to reposition items without leaving a trace, they knew this forest far better than most. At this point, the case transcended a simple disappearance. It became a symbol of eroding trust between memory and truth, between loved ones and suspects, between what we see and what someone sets up. As one experienced investigator remarked, maybe we'll never know where Ethan went, but, and this is certain, someone knows, and they're keeping it to themselves. For weeks after the shoe was found, no new clues emerged. The official search was suspended. Police stated the case remained under active investigation, but without sufficient evidence to draw conclusions. Ethan's family held a quiet memorial, but without a photo. No one could say for certain he was gone. His mother, Loretta, didn't speak at the gathering. Instead, she left a handwritten letter pinned to the pine tree in her yard. It read, "If you're still out there, I'm waiting." Rebeca slowly began to recover. She didn't leave Louisiana, but she never returned to photography either. In her first and only interview after the ordeal, she sat silent for a long time before answering the question, if you could say one last thing to Ethan, what would it be? She looked into the camera, lips trembling, and said, "I'm sorry, I don't remember everything, but I know you never left." That simple line struck thousands of viewers into silence. Some believed Rebeca meant something deeper, that Ethan still existed, not in body, but in a choice. A final decision he once made, a sign he left, a moment in the dark that helped her survive. Months later, a small group of volunteers placed a wooden marker deep in the Kisatchie forest, near the site of the last known trace. It bore no names, only a single line, for the one who stayed and the one who led the way. No one could say who was who. Maybe that didn't matter. The disappearance of Ethan and Rebecca never became a national headline for months on end. No suspect was arrested, no courtroom confession. But for those who followed it from the beginning, it left behind a lingering question about the places, the corners of nature and humanity where truth doesn't live in evidence, but in the things that can't be explained. When the forest goes quiet, when all the voices have faded, what remains isn't an answer, but a feeling that someone had been there, had tried to leave a mark, had tried to live, to love, and to keep a promise. Two people entered the woods. One returned. Said. Other didn't. But somewhere through it all, it seems they were never truly apart.